So, Mohsin, are we ready to go?
Yeah. So, Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. I welcome you all on behalf of Memon Professional Forum, and it's my honor and privilege to welcome today's speaker, Mr. Nadeem Ghani, who is the Dean of Nixer and Civitas. Welcome, welcome, sir. Dr. Nadeem.
Thank you, Mohsin.
So here we go. Just few rules for the participants. This session will be interactive. There's going to be a presentation delivered by Mr. Nadeem Ghani, and if in case you have any question you want to participate, you can raise your hand. I'll facilitate you. I'll open up your mic. I'll unmute you. You can place your question. If your mic is not working, you can place your question in the chat box as well. So we are ready to go. Sir, over to you.
Great, thank you, Mohsin, and thank you, everybody, for giving me a chance to talk to you about education in pre, during, and post COVID-19. We'll spend hopefully most of our time talking about the post-COVID or during this epidemic time period. I hope that you ask me lots of questions. By way of introduction, I've been part of Nixer for the last almost 13 years now, and Civitas since 2015. So from the perspective of education as an administrator, I would say my area of expertise mostly is in the younger years, from pre-nursery all the way through A levels. From a university perspective, I'll be sort of leaning only on my personal experience from university. I have two kids, relatively close to being college bound. One is already enrolled, but will start hopefully whenever things clear up, in August or September, whenever that happens, and one who will be applying shortly. So at some level, whether as an administrator, as a student, as a parent, we have the entire range to discuss. But with that background, let's jump in. I want to share with you the objective today. We will look at it, and given the audience, I'm going to assume that most people will be listening to this or watching from the perspective of parents, whether you have kids who are very, very young, 3, 4, 5 years old, to students who are in A levels, in general, roughly that, but also something similar for parents whose kids are in university, either locally in Pakistan or outside. The second point that is important to note before we get into the details is that the ideas and the opportunities, the options that I'll be presenting are more from the perspective of premium, resource unconstrained private schools, colleges, and universities. There's a whole nother set of challenges that are faced by the vast majority of private schools and government schools, sort of fall under a very separate segment of how they would handle the challenge that is COVID. But what we're going to talk about today is from the perspective of solutions in education that are available to schools that are not constrained by financial resources. Any schools that feel that they don't have the money at this point to invest either in training, in technology, in hardware, bandwidth, and so on, will find it a little difficult to face this challenge, at least in the months where social distancing is a reality. Okay, so with that sort of frame of reference, let's look at the roadmap for today. I want to do a reality check. Lots of people have different opinions about what COVID means for us, how real the threat is, what the impact is. So I want to very quickly talk about that. And for someone who says that, look, I'm not convinced that this is real, then what I have to say will largely be marginalized from that perspective. So it is important that we're all on the same page in terms of what the threat truly is. Then we're going to talk about, given that understanding of the threat, are schools ready to open? And if they are, what the expectations should be, in what form, whether it's on campus, online, hybrid, so on and so forth. Um, and the third part of it will be what technology is available now, how schools can use it, and finally, I want to close with what it truly means for parents, not for students, but for parents. How should you prepare yourself to be a facilitator, a person who is educationally dependent children? So a student who's 17, 18 will largely manage this on their own from a content standpoint, but there's still a lot of things that we as parents need to be mindful of, to keep an eye on them, to guide them in the right direction, because as as the playing field gets really, really big and technology makes that a reality, there's so many different options now available, that there are also so many ways to go astray and wander a little too far off whatever path we've prescribed for our kids and for our families. So what that means for parents, so this is the roadmap. Let's jump into point one straight away. I'm going to try to zoom in, see if we can. This was a report that was put together by a group of data scientists at Oxford University, and it was put together specifically for the government of Sindh in late April. First day or so of May is when we had access to it, and this is a report which studied a lot of different scenarios and models and looked at growth rates that Pakistan has had, the infection rates, made corrections for the limited testing, for perhaps some sort of masked understanding of the total fatalities in Pakistan. And based on all of that, they came up with this model in a moderate scenario. And it's important for us to kind of look at, let me see if I can get the pen going here. So it's important to look at these tools right here. That the public, we're assuming that places of worship are opening, there's partial opening of markets and commercial activities, uh, public offices. However, there's a ban on public gatherings, and schools and universities are closed. Okay. In addition to that, up here, uh, there is citizen behavior that people are wearing masks, which is which is perhaps one of the best ways to mitigate the spread of this virus. And they are taking into account personal hygiene measures and hand sanitization, social distancing, and all of those things. So in that environment, right, by the end of July, there is a huge number of there's first of all a wide margin, but this number of 750,000 fatalities just in sin is a staggering number. It is an unmitigated disaster. Uh, and what is frustrating, obviously, with this data is the range is very, very broad. Now, there are certain things that we can take risks with, but I think every human being would agree with me. The segment that we're the least risk or the most risk averse with is our children, right? So if the worst case scenario is a staggering number of fatalities, I think we all, as parents, as administrators, teachers, and also obviously students, we need to be mindful of that. And schools and universities, colleges should be the last places that open up in response to the coronavirus. So I'm going to assume that to be the scenario, that for the next several months, perhaps well into the second term, in Jan, Feb, March, roughly there, is when we can start to get some sort of normality back into on-campus life. Yeah. So what I'm going to present next assumes that schools will not be able to resume normal operations. Even if they are open, they will not be able to assume normal operations uh, for several months. Okay. Uh, all right. So now let's look into the second part. If schools are ready to reopen, here are some very simple things that they would have to have in place. in terms of hygiene, obviously things like hand hygiene, masks, making that mandatory, having disinfecting tunnels as people walk in, and very frequent disinfection of high traffic areas. We're going to look at that. Uh, Now, that is very doable. This part uh, is this is not an issue. I think even cash-strapped schools should be able to manage this. The problem comes with this. Okay. Now, given that most private schools are on rented facilities, all the way from nursery schools to A-level campuses, the vast majority of our students, even in elite schools, are in schools with very high population density. And that obviously has very deep roots in underfunding education as a whole, and then um, uh, not having enough space for schools to expand into, where now, even though we've been able to provide, many schools are providing very high quality private education, but there's still extremely high population density areas. If you want to take some looks at what schools can do, uh, O-level, A-level schools, primary schools are looking at alternate days. So for example, if a student is coming to school Monday through Friday, schools are thinking that perhaps they would open Monday through Saturday and have students come, one set of students coming Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the other Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Instead of coming for the whole day, there would be Monday half day, Wednesday half day, and Friday half day. So what used to be the population density, we could reduce that by, almost 75%, make it a quarter. Even then, the 6 foot distance that is recommended is going to be very tough to pull off. It essentially becomes, for the 6 foot radius to have in reality, would reduce the student population by 90%. Okay, and that'll be a tough challenge for any school. Okay, so social distancing, if you see some of the other options like hybrid delivery online as well as on campus, staggered timings, we talked about alternate days, we talked about, are there any other things? Let's take a look at what universities around the world are doing, right? So um, at Brown University and at University of Pennsylvania, they're evaluating 3 scenarios. The first scenario uh, is business as usual, right? With business as usual, that is an extremely unlikely reality to be in. So let's look at a second scenario, and this is where I've seen this across lots of different universities, where instead of 2 semesters, a fall semester and a spring semester, they're thinking about 3 semesters, out of which 2 will be on campus and 1 will be done remotely, right? Universities are going to struggle with that because the staggering sort of price tag for tuition fee is not justified by remote uh, learning. Okay, because the on-campus experience is critically important, and students feel that they might be able to wait it out. Um, so that's something that remains to be seen. There are some universities that are saying that, look, we just won't do a fall semester at all, and this is where California, all universities in California are at that point where universities like Berkeley, UCLA expect to be closed for the fall semester, and they would do distance learning only. Okay. Now, the if they're on campus, these are the same options that universities in the US or in Pakistan or anywhere else in the world are considering. And the point of my showing you this was simply that in the top tier Pakistani schools and schools, colleges, and universities, we're looking at the same set of options. Okay, that we would do reduction in class sizes, have a hybrid online and in-person model, have live streamed lectures and pre-recorded lectures, have small group discussions. And one thing that I found very interesting was that for the schools that are staying open for the fall semester, I'm talking about universities in the US, that they're considering the possibility of just having younger professors teach classes on campus. They're also considering having professors sign a contract that says that they will limit their, um, travel and largely be quarantined and isolate themselves to their homes and to the classrooms and their offices. So there's not broad travel. So those are things that residential communities can perhaps manage. But for schools where students are coming back and forth every single day, I feel that this is a very, very risky proposition, even with every attempt to maintain social distance, to bring students back on campus anytime soon, which means that we have to very, very carefully evaluate technology. Okay. So let's look at what technology solutions would entail. But I was able to come up with some pictures of schools that are doing social distancing. So if you look at this one, this is parents dropping their kids off to school, and this is not in Pakistan, obviously. This is other parts of the world, in France and in other parts of Asia. I think we've got to try to see if compare the reality of the morning drop off to schools, right? And the traffic jam and the hordes of students that will come in. Um, it is very difficult to have something like this um, be our drop off or pickup routine. Traffic jams outside of schools last for like 20-30 minutes easily. That's when everybody can pick up their kids quickly. If this is how students would exit and enter school, it just to me seems like a very difficult proposition. Here's kids coming into school, and you see these spots marked on the ground for social distancing. Also, very difficult to replicate in our society of how traffic and foot traffic and automobile traffic happens. Inside the classroom, if you look at how many students typically for I would say in grade 7, 8, 10, there are 30 to 40 students in a class. Here you would have maybe 8, 10 students. So on campus life will be, I would say, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to deliver safely. Even the bathroom, right? Um, because campuses are small, it'd be difficult to cut down, the capacity for other services. Although I would argue if there are much fewer students on campus, then perhaps other facilities would be sufficient, even at the cafeteria, the canteen, bathrooms, etc. So social distancing is a challenge, and I feel I would, as an administrator, feel extremely uncomfortable to have students on campus, because it's not obviously the students only, because the age group here is perhaps the least impacted in terms of symptoms and eventual health complications. It's when the students who are infected go home. Pakistan has a very um, happy distinction of having the largest household sizes in the world, right? So close to 10 people per household, multi-generational households. Most households have uh, grandparents, parents, and grandkids, right? So it's the elderly parents and grandparents who'd be the most at risk. And we've seen this now, that at first it was only men who were getting infected in Pakistan, but as the spread rate got faster, uh, the virus infection rate at home got uh, a lot higher, and you started seeing women in higher numbers getting infected. So this is the worry here, that if students come on campus, the chance of a student getting adversely impacted from a health perspective may not be as high, but the impact of that at home will be perhaps catastrophic. So social distancing, a very tough challenge. So let's now look at technology, right? So if we go to technology, um, many schools, and Nixer and Civitas are no exception, we're looking at lots of different convergences of technology. One is having an operations management system, which many elite schools, at least a few elite schools, already have. Uh, Many schools are looking at learning management systems, which is how to effectively deliver content to the students. So this would be archives and libraries of content, a single repository for assignments, for homework, and also for report cards, for communication, meetings with teachers, parents, live streaming, video conferencing. All of that happens through LMS or learning management systems. And there are honestly dozens. And over the past few weeks, we've been looking at so many different LMSs, and that can be done. Obviously, it's expensive, but it is technology that's not available right now. It has been available probably for the last decade at least. Then a big part of our learning process is assessments and tests, especially for students, as you've now seen, for students who went through this nightmare of registering whether Cambridge exams, will they happen or they won't happen? What about private candidates? What if this, the next set of exams in October, November, उस वक्त भी नहीं खुले स्कूलें, तो क्या होगा? So not just schools, but Cambridge is also looking at testing uh, in with two components. One is, how do you prepare the test, and how do you invigilate the test? So in a testing management system, there are so many different ways that schools and colleges, universities, and also examiners are looking at how to put together tests. And when a student is unable to come to campus or to a remote or to another facility, like a lot of these exams take place at hotels and convention centers, DHA convention center, etc. अब वो भी अगर option नहीं है, ये बच्चे घर पे लेंगे tests. So there are proctoring systems where they use artificial intelligence to see if a student who's taking a test at home is doing it in a way that keeps the student within the bounds of the academic honor code, right? And obviously, we'll have to put things in play, like using artificial intelligence to monitor the student's behavior through their own laptop camera. There are ways to uh, disable browsers and any other communication technology that they might have at their disposal, looking at eye contact, looking at sound level in the room, and so many different ways that you can do remote proctoring or invigilation. And Cambridge had been looking at this. I recall the first time that Cambridge reached out to schools to get our feedback on whether online Cambridge examinations, जैसे हर May, June or October, November में होते हैं, if those can be done online. Back then, there wasn't really a compelling reason, right? It was happening fine. But now there is a compelling reason. So not just schools, but examinations that will determine the academic future of many of our students will also very likely move on to this platform oops, uh, of online testing and invigilation. The the issue that we need to keep in mind is for minors, right? So a fourth grader taking a test with being watched on camera. Now there are certain ethical question marks that we need to be mindful of, and there are some companies that have asked this question: that how old are the students that are being monitored online? So there is certainly that social debate that should ensue as to whether this is something that can go across the board, this online proctoring and invigilation, or is this something that will be limited to the older segment of our students. Okay, so technology, there's lots of technology available, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because that's not I'm assuming most people here are not looking to become experts in education technology, but I hope that our schools and school administrators are taking this very, very seriously. Now, a question, however, that should be asked is this technology has been available. So why now, right? So, and why could it not have happened before? If it is available, it will help education. Why didn't we do this before? Um, I want to answer that question, but I want to walk you through a scenario using technology, how this classroom would be redesigned to be reinvented, where a student is sitting at home. So I'll walk you through around 9 or 10 steps in which a specific topic that used to be done in class, where students come to class and it's always a combination of the teacher presenting in class, giving them some classwork and then some homework, and then come back to class and do review. Compare that to what the options are now. Okay, so imagine students are not coming to campus. On the learning management system, both the student and the parent will, through push notifications, be alerted of an assignment. Okay, the next topic, for example, is probability. We're doing math, and they will be given preparation before their first online class, which is watch this video or read this article or listen to this podcast by next Tuesday, which means that this can be at the pace of the student, but at the schedule determined by the teacher, right? So this is a very helpful thing. And in fact, something that frustrates a lot of teachers, even if they assign this reading today in the very tactile, um, in-person um, content delivery method on campuses, often teachers will assign a reading passage or some pre-work before they come to the class. A lot of students may not do it, right? And there's very little way to monitor, engage, assess that every time. But what would happen now and in the very, very near future is when this reading is assigned and the student comes to class, all students would be required to take a very short quiz. And here we've called it a, uh, a randomized quiz. Okay, what a randomized quiz means is imagine you're sitting at home and you get this 5-question quiz, and there's one of my friends in their home. Now I could easily call them and say, hey, this is a quiz that the teacher has just told us she's taking. What is the answer to question 1? What a randomized quiz does is it takes questions 1, 2, 3, 4 and scrambles them, which means question 1 for me will be different from question 1 for another kid and question 1 for a third kid and so on. And because this is a multiple choice quiz, the answer to my question may be option A is correct. For someone else's question 1, option B is correct. So there are lots of different combinations, which makes it very difficult for a student uh, to uh, to cheat. Now, if a student hasn't done the pre-work, which is watch this video between now and Tuesday, if they haven't done the pre-work, they will not be able to negotiate that quiz and will not be allowed into step 3. Okay, and very quickly students will have to realize that in order to get any time with the teacher, even if it's virtual or online time, they will have to do the pre-work. In today's environment, in-person classroom environment, ye nahi ho sakta. This can't effectively happen. So right away, technology has helped us do something that we couldn't do in the past. Now here where I'm talking about the 80-20 interactive explanation. So this is all students coming online. And even if it's a class of 30, right? So they're all online, and it's a regular Zoom class where 80% of the time the teacher is talking, and they will entertain 3-4 questions, something along those lines. But most of the time it will be the teacher. Then during this session they can assign classwork similar to the quiz that the student had to take and pass before they moved into this step 3. So there will be some classwork with real-time data that this teacher will be getting, and that way they'll be able to uh, tweak the speed, go slower, go faster, spend more time in specific topics. So that'd be classwork. Then homework would be assigned. There would be smaller group sessions that could happen with the teacher or with the teacher's assistant or an associate teacher, breakout sessions, and so on and so forth. There's so much flexibility and networking that can happen through technology. So and then ultimately it would result in a test which can be done online, proctored in a virtual setting through artificial intelligence. Grading can also happen, and so the footprint of technology is can have a really beneficial impact. Okay, so the question really is, if this has been available, it didn't get invented in the last 2 3 months since the advent of COVID-19. Why didn't it happen? Why didn't it take root before? And why should we think that now, even though COVID will be gone in hopefully a few months or maybe in a year or two, that it will stay, right? And the answer to this is simply in this graph. This will, for those of you who've done, chemistry at some point in high school or in university, we'd come up with this reaction curve that going from this point where it takes a lot of energy to do something to a lower energy point where you can do the same level of work with less effort, less energy, one would want to move in this direction. Okay, one would want to move in this direction. But the reason that doesn't happen, right, is because there is a hump here. Before you can move down in this direction, there is an activation energy. You have to get over that hump. And what is that activation energy in schools? Imagine if you have a teacher who's very good at her job or his job, but it's very paper pencil driven. For them to use technology, every student, parent, all teachers, the school will have to have laptops and tablets. The teacher will need to be trained, and they will have to see no other option uh, but to get trained. So this activation energy was too high, and things were working just fine. So schools, even when they tried it, because they couldn't get every teacher to take on this new approach, it would eventually die. Yeah. But what has happened now is, because of Corona, this activation energy has become smaller. This resistance that you would face from the student or the teacher or the school or even the parent, that mental block is now gone. And schools, in order to survive, have to make this investment, right? Which is buying licenses to learning management systems, buying proctoring licenses, buying test management system licenses, uh, getting higher bandwidth, spending time training the teachers, because if they don't, the next few months at the very least will be lost, right? So now schools are very actively, or at least the elite schools and the forward thinking schools, should be doing this. If they're not doing this, I think that it spells trouble. And once you get up over this hump and to this point, there's no going back. Okay. So the technology changes that you see today will be here for a long, long, long time. All right. So what we've discussed very quickly uh, is we did a reality check, right? We felt that, which means the threat is real. We said that schools in this social distancing in Karachi schools, even the elite schools, is too big a risk. So we're not going to do that, which means that technology is available and it will be adopted in order for learning to continue. And it is, I feel, irreversible. Once this has happened, it will tip forever until a new wave of something happens. Uh, and let's wait and see what that is. Okay. Now, no matter how much technology we have, there is one thing that is true, which is this: there is an element that cannot be replaced by technology. And a very simple example that I give is for a kid who's 5 years old. You cannot give, the teacher cannot give this kid a hug online. Okay. You can't take them by the hand uh, and lead them to their classroom. Human beings are social animals, and there's a lot that they learn from each other, even older ones. I've seen this happen. I bet you some of you listening to my monotone voice will get bored and will probably drift off. You will lose your focus. You will get up and take a walk. Um, and this will happen. So everything online is not the right answer. When even if a student gets bored in class, there are other students who will keep them on track, right? And schools do that. They channel positive peer pressure, and they sort of scrub out negative elements of peer pressure. That happens. A lot of that happens on campuses in person. So what I want to talk about is now this specific slide. This, what we've talked about so far, is generally the landscape, right? But each family is different, each student is different. So what I want to talk about in this slide is, what does a school provide? Okay. And I've taken the example of two specific families, a family, call it family ABC, and a second family XYZ. And I think there are largely three things that, as a parent, I expect from a school. One is academic support. The second, it's just padhai kaise hoti hai. That's one part of it. The second part is uh, is tactical support, career counseling, university counseling, academic counseling, generally just you know transcripts, reports, those tactical support features. That's the second thing that a school provides. And the third thing is this part right here. This physical, social, emotional, mental well-being of a student. Okay. And that is a critical component of communities. Human beings are not designed to live in isolated bunkers, right? And students in particular, yeah, technology reduces that distance, but it doesn't make up for being with other people. And how schools provide that is through sports, through friends, through being acknowledged, getting a smile from a friend, from a teacher, on a job well done, uh, knowing that you make a difference, that you matter. And not every kid will be an academic superstar. And some kids get their acknowledgement through sports, some get it through debate, some get it through community service. And there are lots of reasons that a student needs to come to campus, right? There's this isolation, and this has been talked about in the media ad nauseum, on television and in different shows, about students feeling this emotional isolation that starts from physical isolation, has a very detrimental effect. पढ़ाई के gaps तो close हो जाएंगे अगर आपने 2 महीने नहीं पढ़ा, दूसरे 2 महीनों में आप double पढ़ लें, right? So you can close that gap. But damage to your emotional well-being is very difficult to recover. Okay, so I would say, let's say family ABC says that about 50% of what I expect from a school is uh, is the well-being part. About 20% is tactical support, and about 30% is padhai. This is family ABC. Some other family might say, "Nahi, bhai, I send my kid to school for padhai, nothing else." Okay, तो स्कूल से मुझे एक मकसद है, आप मेरे बच्चे को पढ़ा दें, इनके ए स्टार्स लाएं, ताकि ये आगे यूनिवर्सिटी चला जाए, डॉक्टर बन जाए, कुछ ऐसी चीजें हो जाए. एंड या गिव देम गुड करियर काउंसलिंग. बट ये इमोशनल वगैरह जो है ना, ये आई डोंट बिलीव इन दैट. ये हम घर पे करें, which is, I'm not judging, I'm saying this is one extreme where school largely does padhai, and the other extreme is where it is much more about being connected and developing certain skills that aren't only connected to A stars. Okay, so these are two ways of looking at school. Now, this is let's focus on this one, right? And if you go to the next slide, uh, now what I've done, whoops, is looked at the same family where you've got a kid who's this old, sort of a O level, A level kid. versus a younger kid. If the family said that, look, for my older kid, school, I expect 50% of the reason why I send them to school is their well being. For younger kids, that's much bigger, right? That same family would say that for a kid who's 7, 8, 6 years old, 10 years old, the social well being part is much bigger. Okay? So, schools, I feel, provide a value. Academics is part of it, tactical support is part of it, and student well being is part of it. Now, what we would do next is let's look at how well technology does in providing all of these: one, two, and three. In fact, let's call this one, two, and three. Okay, so let's look at how well technology does here. Okay, all right. So uh, what I've shown you, and I'll sort of walk you through the slide a little bit. I've looked at two different extremes. One is the in-person only, one extreme, and the other extreme is everything online, nothing in person, everything virtual. Okay. And over here on the green bar, the height of the bar says how good technology is at making that happen. And by that, I'm saying how good technology is making academics happen, and how bad, what are the negative effects of technology on academics. And similarly for in-person, I look at the positive effects of technology, of in-person on academics, and the negative effects of in-person on academics. And here are some of those effects. So in person, there's a personal connection, right? There's informal, formative assessment. So a teacher, when we talked about predicted grades, for those of you who have kids in O and A levels, predicted grades required more than evidence that is gathered through summative evaluation. Formative evaluation is looking at the kid, looking at their body language, looking at their commitment, the kinds of questions they ask in class. There's a sort of a tactile in-person element to that is very difficult to replicate online. So that can happen in person, but not so much online. Students can work in groups in person. There's better peer learning in person, and there's differentiated management. If a student is fidgety, the teacher might see that and say, Ahmed, aap beta aage aake baith jao, right? Something as simple as that. Or if a student is looking confused, or is, just comes to school one day and the teacher will be able to sense the anxiety. All of those differentiated management elements can happen in person. But we talked about so many other things. That 10-step process that we talked about can happen online. I would say good schools, good teachers will figure out the perfect balance of how much of it should be. So this is that hybrid approach. Some of it in person and some of it online. And then you will see that the advantages can be combined of technology and in person, and the disadvantages can be subtracted, right? What couldn't be done online now can be done in person, and what couldn't be done in person can be done online. And then there's a question.
Yeah, Nadeem Sab, there is a hand raised by Mr. Junaid Shekhar.
Go ahead.
Ji Junaid bhai, please. Junaid Sab, your mic is unmute. Can you please say something which you'd like to?
Actually, this is Mrs. Junaid Sheikha speaking.
Okay.
And there were two questions that we've shared on the group. One is when we're talking about, as you're talking about in the normal situation, there's a lot of things that come up in academia, and a lot of it is based on interaction. So one is obviously, how do you see extracurricular activities in coming forward in the next due to COVID-19, as obviously there are certain risks attached to perhaps community service, but as I have learned with my older daughter, community service is a very valuable learning skill for the children, for her. well, it was one for her as well, and then it also is looked at really well when it comes to university admissions. So how do you
Right.
see us doing debating and all of these other activities in this
Okay.
post-COVID?
Um, Thank you so much, Mashika, for your question. I think there are certain extracurricular activities that can transition to online fairly readily, right? Debate is one of them. Debate coaching can happen online, and it won't be the same, but I would say it'd be 70% as good as being in person. Uh, Playing cricket online or soccer online, FIFA, um, I would say it doesn't really replicate the real experience of playing soccer or cricket in person. So now we've got to look at which activities can be done online very effectively. I would say community service is one of those things that can be transitioned. Now, one element of community service is the actual physical help that is provided to others that we serve. Nixer started this thing called the TAP Fund, which is the Average Pakistani Fund, TAP, the Average Pakistani Fund. There are hundreds, I would say about 150 students who are actively involved online in TAP. They make phone calls, they make marketing literature, they do, fundraising, they come up with ways, they do, campaigns on making masks, reaching out to vendors to do price negotiations on purchasing PPE, gowns and shoe covers, and so on. They vet different segments of our society on who should get financial support with ration, who should get rent support. They've made, they've negotiated contracts with grocery stores so that we can send people to these grocery stores. So rather than giving them cash, we send the people who need support from us. We send them to these grocery stores, and everything that has been set up is an auditable system, so that donors can audit our bank statements, and in the process, our students are learning some of the same things they would have learned in person. They are making MOUs. They are making pricing contract and documents like that. They are, involved in so many different ways um, where they're sharing information online. So something like that can be done. Another element of community service is raise funds to get an iPad or tablet or laptop for an orphanage, and then do Zoom classes with them. They are doing something similar with senior citizens shelters. So as long as there is the will to help, it will happen, right? What is much tougher to transition online is physical sports, and we haven't been able to really make that happen. Other ECAs that will start in some schools, and I know certainly at Nixer and at Civitas, is programming classes online. They're doing theater online. They're doing poetry recitations online. They're talent shows and open mic. तो बहुत सारी चीजें हो जाती हैं. Um, Now, I sort of running short on time, but I want to share an example with you. So back in the early 90s, when I was working with a company in the US, that company got serious about getting, sort of modifying and retrofitting its work campus to accommodate their employees with disabilities, particularly those who are wheelchair bound and those who were vision impaired. तो बहुत सारी चीजें उन्होंने की. एक इनका प्रोजेक्ट था that they wanted to uh, make drinking fountains जो आप मुंह लगा ये एक बटन दबा के you drink from a stream of water that comes out, खड़े खड़े जो लोग पीते हैं, uh, and that wasn't accessible to people in wheelchairs. Now they asked engineers to redesign the drinking fountain, and the engineer solution was कि आप एक ramp बनाएं, उस पे wheelchair चढ़ जाएगी और someone could drink from the drinking fountain while seated in the wheelchair. And there were very, very investment heavy solutions like that, lifts and ramps and stuff like this. When they asked they gave a similar exercise to a bunch of students, little, kids from grade school. उनका solution ये था कि आप drinking fountain के बराबर में एक cup dispenser डाल दें. And the person in the wheelchair can take the cup from the cup dispenser and fill up the cup and then drink. The point of, and this was then replicated throughout the company, the point of this example was that sometimes when we think about a new world with the same set of deliverables, कि हमें पानी पीना hai from the fountain, then the solution doesn't change. If your problem definition doesn't change, then the solution doesn't change. With the kids who didn't have this engineering background, their definition of the problem was, how do we quench thirst for people in wheelchairs? The engineer's definition of the problem was, how do we make the drinking, the water reach their mouth by the same traditional method, mouth to the stream of water? So the answer to your question, Nisheka, is that we will have to think of the new world in a very different set of deliverables. So rather than saying hame XYZ karni hai, we've got to look at fundamentally why schools exist. And if we're talking about making good human beings with strong critical thinking skills, with the confidence to challenge the world, be comfortable with uncertainty, with ambiguity, that is the eventual sort of quest for us. And we will have to redesign solutions to that. Not so much how do we take a paper exam and now do the paper exam online. So I feel a lot of extracurriculars, once we redefine what we get out of these and what we give to the society, बहुत सारी चीजें I feel हो जाएंगी. कुछ चीजें थोड़ी मुश्किल होंगी, which we will keep thinking about. As far as universities are concerned, I feel the reason to do extracurriculars is not so much that it helps university, even though it does. I think the reason to do it is because it makes our kids better people and better equipped to handle the world. And we will come up with ways to make that happen. Inshallah, universities will also recognize that these are good people who are able to, make a difference in life. I hope I've answered your question. I just have 5 minutes. I want to finish out the 2 slides that I have left, and then we'll open it up to other questions.
Nadeema, there are many questions coming in, so we need to
okay
with the presentation so that we can answer the questions.
Okay, mujhe 2 minute दें, and I'll finish this thing out. So one part was the right combination of technology and in person, which is right here. Now, if you look at tactical support, it can be done being very close to the virtual side of the spectrum. And if you look at student well-being, this is the part that I really wanted to focus on. Padhai online ho jayegi, right? And this tactical support bhi online ho jayega. What is difficult is student well-being. Student well-being works best if it is very close to in-person. And the biggest damage to education or to our students that we need to be mindful of is if we try to use technology to do student well-being, there are lots of negative effects that we will not be able to overcome unless there is an element of in-person. Okay. ये slide करके फिर हम खत्म करते हैं. This is very important. So parents, this is what you should be ready with when the schools start. Okay. One is you've got to have infrastructure. Now think about, let's say if you have one kid, आपके पास घर पे एक laptop है, एक iPad है, that's sufficient. But imagine if you have 2 or 3 kids, each one of them will simultaneously need equipment. Okay. So you'll have to think about how do you get that equipment? How do you use that equipment? That's one thing. The second part is, and this I cannot overstate, parents have to invest in their own skills for technology. Okay. अब बच्चे हमसे इतने आगे नहीं हो सकते, अभी तो tactile आप इनको संभाल सकते हैं, but with technology, अगर सारी पढ़ाई online जाएगी for some time, and then most of it stays online, you will have to be good with technology, understanding their screen time, looking at controls that you can put in place. The school will communicate with parents very differently. पहले आपको PTMs और ये सब होते थे, वो भी होंगे, मगर lots of information to you from the school will be available uh, through LMSs. So you've got to get comfortable with these learning management systems. Um, the information that that is available for your child, to be able to guide them properly, you will need to know how to access and use these reports and information. And one thing that you will see, perhaps not right away, but in the next few months or even a year, admissions to schools will look at the parents' readiness to be able to support and guide educationally dependent students, right? So I know from the perspective of the school that I'm part of, especially for the younger ones, for nursery and grade 1 and grade 3, parents' comfort with technology will become a admission assessment point. Okay, you have to look at the red flags for your kids: signs of depression, of isolation, lack of physical activity. You'll have to look at predators online, right? And finally, distance learning. How do we manage this with dual career families where mom and dad are both working? If the student has to be at home, who takes care of that student, right? Even if your one parent stays at home, generally that's the mom. Not always, but generally that's the mom. And if you have two kids you need to provide support to, how do you do that? If teachers are sending for a first grader or seventh grader, if they're sending a lot of classwork and online and homework online, आपको उनके साथ बैठ के facilitate करना पड़ेगा. And then finally, it is just now a very, very challenging environment at home if the primary caregiver to the kids at home has no downtime. There is mental and physical fatigue. So this part is a major, major question mark in my head. I think that's largely what I wanted to share with parents. I'm happy to take any question now.
Yeah, Adil, you go first. You have raised the hand.
Yeah. Hi guys. Thank you, Mosundai, and thank you, Nadeem sir, for all the talk here. So I think one question that has been coming to my mind throughout the presentation is that when we go from an in-person to either a hybrid or a completely online platform, students and parents will now have the ability to pick teachers instead of picking schools. So the availability of
Right.
teachers online, how will that change the current industry infrastructure?
Look, I think that is up in the air. If I think you unbundle a school to a uh, uh, to a specific kind of product, let me share with you something that I had kind of put together here, right here. Okay, so if a school is specifically a product, right? I think you can unbundle products quite easily. Unbundling services, if you see a school as a service, it is difficult to unbundle. So for a parent that sees a specific teacher as the primary reason to be part of a school, not so much the school community, then I suppose picking, a very a la carte kind of service, you could do that. I would take physics with Sir Naushad, but I would take chemistry with this other teacher, math with this other teacher, where in the past they were all had to be in one school. Now I can just take those classes online. I think then the concept of school specifically is very different in the future in that world. And then you would do career counseling somewhere else. You would play sports with some club, or you do swimming at Karachi Gymkhana, and then you take part in the school of leadership that does debate classes. So you would entirely unbundle that product. Um, that has pros and cons. I think the pro of that is that you're customizing a solution to your and tailoring it to your need. The con of that and the casualty of that is a community, right? There isn't a school community. These options, perhaps not in Pakistan, but unbundling a school has been an option for available for a long time for parents and for students. If you look at universities, you can get all of the content from all of these top tier universities, whether it's Ivy League schools or Stanford and and so on. Even Oxford and Cambridge online for free. But if you conclude that educational communities reside as communities, then I think unbundling would not be uh, a good substitute. But if you feel that education can be unbundled into its discrete subproducts, then I feel you're in a better position, and you would have both. I think models will exist in the future where you can cut and paste. Both will be available. But I think it would be hard to be part of both. I think you'd have to be part of one model or the other. Um, I hope that that answers the question that you had.
It does.
Another
Thank
question.
you.
Another question is Amin Patel sir. Amin bhai, can you please?
फॉर्मेटिव प्रोग्राम मुझे 2-3 बातें थोड़ी हैं, मेरी रिजर्वेशन है। एक तो ये कि जो आपने बात कही उसमें तालीम और तरबियत 2 पहलू हैं। तालीम तो
जी
हमें इस मीडिया से मिल जाएगी, मगर हमारे
जी
बच्चों का जो तरबियत का पहलू है वो बाकी रह जाएगा काफ़ी हद
जी
तक। दूसरी बात जो हम और आप बात कर रहे हैं वो एक बहुत महदूद परसेंटेज ऑफ द पाकिस्तान स्पेशली वो कर
जी
सकते हैं, अप टू
जी
10% और 20% मैक्सिमम। इससे ज्यादा
जी
जो हमारे खास तौर पे सरकारी स्कूल और एक बड़ी तादाद सो कॉल प्राइवेट स्कूल की जो हम कहते हैं वो दे आर नॉट एबल टू डू दिस थिंग्स। इवन 10 साल भी
जी
लग जाए तो आई एम नॉट, बिकॉज आई हैव 18 ईयर एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ एजुकेशन। सो
जी
मुझे बहुत ही ज्यादा इस बात की हुआ है कि एक तो तालीम और तरबियत का बड़ा पहलू रहेगा। दूसरा, जब भी हम इस बारे में बात करेंगे तो नॉट ओनली द परसेंटेज, सम परसेंटेज जो एलाइट क्लास है जो ऐसी स्कूलों में दाखिला बच्चों की करा सकती है जिनके यहाँ ये सारी फैसिलिटी हो सकती है इन नियर
जी
फ्यूचर, बट मेनी
जी
परसेंटेज मे बी 80 और 90% दे आर नॉट फैसिलिटिंग विद दिस। तो हमें वापस
जी
कोई ना कोई उसी, और दूसरी बात ये कि हम वापस या तो उस पत्थर के दौर में जा रहे हैं जिसमें ना कोई स्कूल था, ना मदरसा ना था, ना कोई तालीम थी, जो कुछ भी था वो घर की तरबियत थी। आई एम वेरी सॉरी, मादत के साथ अब इसको थोड़ा फोकस कीजिएगा।
जी अभी साहब आपकी आपकी बात 100% सही है. I'm afraid what will happen in this is the gap between elite schools and your public schools and the lower income private schools, ये फासला बढ़ता जाएगा. And जितने अरसे तक हम घरों में restricted रहेंगे, उतना ही उसका impact ज्यादा होगा. एक सोल्यूशन जो सुनने में आ रहा है कि भाई जून 1 आप खोलें वरना ये स्कूलें नहीं चल सकेंगी या बच्चों की तालीम में बहुत नेगेटिव असर आएगा. आई थिंक नथिंग इज हैपनिंग एट एनी स्कूल, चाहे वो टॉप टियर स्कूल हो या बिल्कुल लो इनकम स्कूल with very very few resources. Nothing is happening at any school which as a parent I would risk the safety of our kids to bring them to school. ऐसी कोई पढ़ाई में खलल नहीं आएगा जो चाहे साल लग जाए कि वो हम कवर अप नहीं कर सके. ज्यादा जो बच्चे बिल्कुल मैट्रिक और इंटर के एज पे हैं, एक साल इनका यूनिवर्सिटी डिले हो जाएगी. टू मी एज अ पेरेंट दैट्स एक्सेप्टेबल. जहां तक तरबियत की बात है, आई फील आपकी बिल्कुल सही इसमें आइडेंटिफिकेशन है कि ऑनलाइन तरबियत नहीं होती. इसके लिए फेस टू फेस आई कांटेक्ट और जो हमारे कल्चर का, जैसे टीचर के सामने कैसे उनसे कब आंख पिलानी है, कब सर झुकाना है,
माहौल
those things cannot happen online. So that part of it will have to happen, but that is also something that doesn't go away in one day, and that cannot be built in one day. तो अगर घर स्कूल बच्चे ना आए 6 महीने तक, आई थिंक जब ये स्कूल आएंगे we will continue from there, right? और ये पूरी आप समझे एक पूरी जिंदगी का की एक जर्नी है जिसमें every day we hope we're a little bit better than we were the day before, and just by working extra hard in the second day doesn't mean कि आप एक दिन कम ले लें. पढ़ाई में आप ये कर सकते हैं कि अगर आज हमने नहीं पढ़ा तो कल डबल पढ़ लें. आई थिंक ये हो सकता है, बट तरबियत में ये नहीं होता. तो ये तो लॉन्ग टर्म हमारा तालीमी इदारों का सबसे बड़ा मकसद है ये. So that will happen, and it will need to happen on in schools. Schools will play their part. And going back to the first question that I was asking, rather than picking a school, you pick a teacher. Usme, as I mentioned, the community which has a certain set of common values, that becomes a casualty. Or Jameen Saab keh rahe hain, these common values, the tarbiyat element of it, is to me a much bigger element than anything a syllabus will teach us. The third part is the thing that is the most troubling is right now the schools that don't have access to this will genuinely suffer academically. Okay, but at some point COVID will go away. चाहे वो 3 महीने लगे या 1 साल लगे या 1.5 साल लगे, and when it goes away, I think पढ़ाई का जो वो gap है वो cover up हो जाएगा, right? But I think the government needs to focus on how to make this happen, make content available on smartphones, make content available on TV and on radio. उस किस्म की चीजें, रेडियो तो अब शायद बहुत ही कम लोग सुन रहे हैं, बट अभी ये जो टीवी लॉन्च किया है, ऐसे बहुत सारी और चीजें इन्हें लॉन्च करनी पड़ेंगी. बट एक चीज ये भी है अली साहब कि अब तकरीबन अब बहुत सारे लोगों को, इनफैक्ट पाकिस्तान इज वन ऑफ दोस प्लेसेस वेयर smartphone penetration is very, very high relative to the per capita GDP. Smartphone penetration is very high, and if there is a will for parents to provide education, the government should provide platforms and content that is designed for Pakistani kids. Usme inhe investment karni padegi, but that's a much bigger, deeper topic that I think will require smarter minds than myself to solve that problem.
Nadeem bhai, thank you very much.
You're
Thank you, but we are looking the government school, especially in the interior of the country, is a very bad
Ji.
shape. Even not available the benches and the blackboard and even the teachers. So how can we do on this? Even though we launch the TV or a mobile, whatever we do, but we can't do. Even the government is not serious or not the honest people.
And again, Usme, honestly, I think the problem isn't COVID. COVID is one hurdle जो आज है कल नहीं होगा. हमारा बहुत एक बुनियादी, एक बहुत जड़ों से जाके एक मसला है, which is what is education for us. अब ये एक मेरी I saw this online or in the news के the education minister, not this one said, Mr. Saeed Ghani, I have a lot of respect, but it's a good iterations पहले they said कि हमने 2 साल से गवर्नमेंट स्कूलों में फर्नीचर भी चेंज नहीं किया है. अब देखें, Nixon has been around now for 13 years, and इंशाल्लाह हमारे पास जो फर्नीचर है वो अगले 13 साल और चल जाएगा वही फर्नीचर. तो स्कूल फर्नीचर से नहीं चलेगा. The school requires vision, and it requires an understanding of so many other things कि अगर आपके पास building भी ना हो, furniture ना हो, I think it requires very strong understanding of why it should exist. And what I had suggested कि हम इसमें middleman को जब तक नहीं हटाएंगे, ये जैसे आप Uber को देखें, पहले जिस तरह टैक्सियां चलती थी, government schools are like those taxis, right? When Uber came, ये सारी जब न्यूयॉर्क सिटी में देखें येलो कैब और ये सब जो होती थी वो बहुत कम हो गई है. And the consumer is much better, and जो latent assets थे लोगों की अपनी प्राइवेट गाड़ियां अब वो इस्तेमाल हो रही हैं, और एक इतना सारा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो टैक्सियों का था अब वो redundant हो गया. इसी तरह स्कूलों में when teachers can directly reach the student और बीच में से आप एडमिन को और स्कूल को हटा दें, उसी वक्त ये हो सकता है. अब पाकिस्तान में PTCL की कहानी देखें, when I was a kid, phone line मिलना was like आप मुबारकें देते थे दूसरों को, हमारे घर फोन लग, right? तो अब वो सिस्टम तो बेहतर नहीं हुआ, वो सिस्टम ही खत्म कर दिया हमने. डायरेक्ट ये कंज्यूमर टू ये मोबाइल का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ही अलग हो गया. इसी तरह आई थिंक हम पुरानी जो ये बिल्डिंगें हैं, जब तक वहां फंसे रहेंगे कि हम फर्नीचर कैसे डालें और इसमें रंग कैसे करें, हमारा प्रॉब्लम वो तारों का ही रहेगा, PTCL वाला ही रहेगा, 30-40 साल पुराना. और
I have a question.
जी, go ahead.
Nadeem Saab.
Assalamualaikum. How will the educationists and the parents cope with the financial pressure of the staggering amount of pieces and when the children are not going to the school for a year? And how do we as parents tackle with these problems, and how are you going to face this problem? Because आप लोगों को भी rentals देने होते हैं, there are teachers fees, लेकिन how much do you think is fair to ask from the parents with for a year the students are not coming to school? So 20% reduction in the fees is not justified because financial pressure is everywhere with the businesses on the halt. तो सबसे इस वक्त जो बड़ा parents का issue है वो अब बच्चों की fees का है, like the parents who have 4 children or 3 children and they're not going to school, and a 20% reduction. And for we are not asking for total waive off because it'll be unfair for the schools also, because schools को rentals देने होते हैं, अपने teachers को fees देनी होती हैं, and they have to survive on their own selves also. तो कहने का मकसद ये है कि जो इस वक्त सबसे बड़ी जो तलवार हम सबों के सरों पे लटकी हुई है, be it the educationalists or be it the parents, कि हम ये जो फाइनेंशियल प्रेशर है फॉर पीरियड ऑफ 6 months और पीरियड ऑफ अ ईयर, हम कैसे अपने बच्चों की 2 लाख रुपए फीसेस पर मंथ दे दें. अगर फॉर इंस्टेंस मेरे आई हैव 4 kids, तो my children are not in our school but they are in other prestigious schools, तो फिर हम किस तरह कोप करें when all the businesses are at halt also? और आप हमारे लिए क्या करें, मतलब आप पेरेंट्स को क्या किस तरह फैसिलिटेट करेंगे कि वो फाइनेंशियल प्रेशर्स में आके उसको एक तरह की चारों तरफ फ्रस्ट्रेशन फैली ही हुई है, क्योंकि एक तो पहले ही सब लोग लॉकडाउन में हैं, आइसोलेशन में हैं, बिजनेसेस नहीं है, और ऊपर से ये फीसेस के जो वाउचर्स आए जा रहे हैं, हम इसको किस तरह डील करें कि जी एजुकेशनलिस्ट पे भी प्रेशर नहीं आए और पेरेंट्स भी कोप करें और दोनों के लिए एक म्यूचुअल way out nikal jaye.
I get it. Can you please introduce yourself as well, because we are just reading your name here. Can't read your name.
This is Uruj Kamran.
Ji, Nadeem, there is also one of the comment from Shoaib Mithani Saab regarding the same thing in the chat box.
Okay, so
how to minimize, so you can cover both.
Personal perspective of it, and I certainly don't speak for the entire industry. In fact, most of the time I'm at odds with the industry, and I get into a lot of trouble for that. I'll share my perspective. Ms. Ruj, I think your point is valid in that the pressures are on parents, they're on schools, they're on teachers. So ultimately, I think it will require an honest and unbiased assessment of where the deepest cuts are, and to address, by deepest cuts, I mean deepest wounds, and to address those. I've had discussions where people have said the 20% reduction in fee, and many parents have said, well, hey, look, this is my legal right. It's not something that I need. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. But you are required to give that discount. I think that's where the problem is. There's a trust deficit. So parents whose businesses have been shut down and have been severely impacted. Take, for example, let's say there's a parent, मेरी school की बात कर लें. Let's say the parent says, भाई, I own a restaurant और वो 3 महीने से बंद पड़ी हुई है और अभी भी social distancing की वजह से हम नहीं afford, we won't be able to afford what we used to be able to afford. I think that parent should get not 20%, but more, okay, through the form of grants and loans, okay, and that requires trust. Now, a parent who doesn't need it shouldn't get it, okay. So, जब हम 20% लेके across the board सबको कर देते हैं, I think उसमें there are additional winners and losers. जिसका 20% से काम नहीं चलेगा, they lose, और जिसका 20% से कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ा, they are fine without it. That money is largely gone to an undeserving family. Okay, so what I have suggested is that there should be a committee which includes administrators, senior administrators, and parents who could then review applications for grants and loans. Okay, तो जो भी स्कूल का बजट बन सकता है वो बजट होना चाहिए. I feel schools also, based on their own resources, set up budgets like this and give it to parents who genuinely need it, not spread it across the board. And as long as there are parents in that committee and administrators in that committee, there would be a higher level of trust to see which parent gets it or which doesn't, which family gets that support. And the support would come in the form of a grant and in the form of a loan. Okay, so that's one part. The second part of this question, and I put up this slide here just for reference for people who studied this for a bit, is स्कूलें एक, जैसे मैंने पहले बात की थी, transaction versus a relationship. उसका एक मैं आपको एक example देता हूँ. Let's say you have a meal at a restaurant, right? If you don't like the meal, or if you feel that I can't afford that meal, पहले हम उस restaurant पे खा सकते थे, अब it's very expensive, हम नहीं खा पाएंगे. And you don't go there, the restaurant shuts down. And when you're able to go to a restaurant, you go to a different restaurant. Okay, that's because the interaction that you have with that restaurant is a transaction. It is not a relationship. Compare that to a meal you have at home. Let's say I come home, my wife prepares a meal, and I don't like that meal. I don't start suddenly saying कि भैया मैं घर पे grocery के पैसे नहीं दूंगा, because कल आके मुझे वहीं खाना खाना है, right? So I would support that because it's a relationship, right? It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. And it is much better to feed that relationship, to invest in it, to develop it. Similarly, a school. Let's say if we say school ko hum 6 mahine ka paise nahi denge because my kid isn't going to school. So some schools will survive, some won't. And the school, let's say aapki school agar band hoti hai aur wo teachers idhar udhar jate hain, at the end, after 6 months, the school that you go back to, it may be the same building, but it won't be the same teachers, it won't be the same admin, it won't be the same culture. It will be brand new. It might be brand new better, or it might be brand new worse, right? Try to compare this to that relationship we have at home. When you are in a relationship and you say, "Bhai, mujhe khana nahi pasand aaya," you don't end the relationship. Okay, so I think this problem cannot be solved with us versus them. Who should survive? Whether it's the parent who should survive, or is it the school that should survive? It should be about each person stepping up to do their fair part. And for parents who don't need it, should step back, because I know for a fact that not all parents need it. I know for a fact that at least for some upper tier schools, parents are not living paycheck to paycheck. Some parents no doubt are, right? But there are some who aren't. And those parents should step back and say, "Bhai, hame nahi zarurat." Now, when we've made that option available, literally that number ends up being 2% of parents. When I know that much, much higher than 2% of parents can afford it. Okay, so this 20% across the board is in and of itself an issue, because parents who need more than 20% don't get that help, and the parents who don't need the 20% are quite happy taking that amount. And I've had someone literally tell me, "Hey, it's better for my cash flow, right? I don't need it. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. Magar mujhe ab ek mahine mein 20% nahi de de, ab abhi de de, because wo mere cash flow ke liye behtar hai." So look, I think we can't treat each other that way. Schools should survive, not because the school is necessary, but because it is in the better interest of the parent, of the kid, for there to be continuity. अगर आप स्कूल से बच्चा कोई और स्कूल में जाता है, उनके दोस्त एक स्कूल में होते हैं. It's a कोई बच्चा जब expel होता है, think about it that way. Their entire social network is disrupted. All right. So it is important, even in 6 months, when the kids return to school, they return to their school as it was, as the culture was, to their teachers. So the short answer to your question, Miss Aruj, is it cannot be a butter on toast approach कि पूरे toast पे आप मक्खन लगा दें, evenly spread करके. you have to pick and choose spots of that toast that will get butter and some that are fine without the butter.
Sir,
I hope
thank you.
I've given you my perspective on it, and I'm sure lots of people will have their own.
Yeah. Nadeem bhai, thanks a lot for your time. We have exceeded with the questions for the time which we have committed with the participants and from you as well. I would like to thank, special thanks to Dr. Shoaib Mithani as well for the coordination of the guest speaker session which you have rendered. Special thanks to him as well. And there are a few comments in the chat box as well, but it has been covered by Nadeem Saab. So,
Mr. Mohsen, if you, I can stay on for another 10 minutes or so. So if people want to ask questions, I'm fine with it. But if you prefer that we should end the discussion, I'm okay with that too.
I'm available. If people would like to ask you more questions, we are here, and Nadeem is here as well. So anybody would like to say any comment or any kind, because few people like Mr. Sila Jaliawala has a comment. Anila Jamil has a comment. Should I read the chat box?
Sure, please go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Miss Anila Jamil saying that we are looking at online classes for the next 7 months and maybe hybrid classes in the coming future. All efforts should be made by schools, colleges to make sessions as interactive as possible. Students' participation is must. Online quizzes at the end of every class is must. Otherwise, we cannot expect students to come in, and it shouldn't be marked. So,
I agree that they should be interactive. There should be ways to draw the student in. So one of the things, particularly for younger kids, that we're thinking of is in this one step. I want to kind of go back to that. Yahan pe, in step 5 on this slide, that when there is a larger group, like let's say all 30-35 students in that classroom are part of that the first session, the second session should be with half the number of kids right here. So let's say 30 बच्चे class में आप 10 के 3 sessions करें, where all kids are on that one screen and the teacher is able to draw out questions from each kid. All right, so it will make the progress slower, but I feel it'll keep the students engaged. So Miss, I agree with your point that being interactive rather than just a one-way discussion where the teacher or the video, even if it's live streamed or pre-recorded, will not be nearly as effective as an interactive session.
There are 2 comments, one from Mr. Shoaib Mithani and another one is from Ms. Anila Jamil. Mr. Shoaib Mithani comments are that their campus cost is going to be minimized because of not conducting classes physically. But on the contrary, there is a comment from Ms. Anila Jamil. She says that there's going to be additional cost in order to have corona protection. So prevention could be there in the future. So
so let me comment on that. So देखिए March में जब स्कूलें बंद हुई, we calculated the savings for the school, right? Savings come largely from electricity and conservancy charges, water and things like that. Electricity consumption would go down, I would say, by at least 80-85%, right? So वो तकरीबन आप बिजली का बिल कम हो जाएगा. In March, when that happened, from my perspective, all 3 campuses contributed that money to that TAP fund, right? तो जहाँ पे भी cost savings होंगी, वो एक separate fund होना चाहिए, right? अगर आप देखें जहाँ अब ये online भी अगर photocopy की cost कम होती है, वो भी एक थोड़ी savings हो जाएगी. मगर there will be additional expenses, and the additional expenses are in acquiring the online infrastructure through buying tablets and laptops for all teachers, increasing your bandwidth, paying for the LMS licensing fee, which is per student, paying for online admission, online proctoring fee, that is per student, looking at hygiene costs. So when these kids walk through these sanitation and disinfection gates, उसमें से कौन सा chemical आप छिड़क रहे हैं? Is it simply water? Is it hydrogen peroxide? Is it some sort of bleach? Is it something else? And those costs vary anywhere from roughly 150 rupees a liter to over 2,000 rupees a liter. So there are lots of additional costs, and I think there should be a tabulation of kahan costs बढ़ रही हैं और kahan costs कम हो रही हैं. There are some campuses in which I will, for example, expect my teachers, at least for the first month, to come to campus to deliver their class. All right. तो उसमें बिजली की भी cost कुछ खास कम नहीं होती. Rent will largely be the same. Teacher salaries, it would be a shame if teacher salaries get slashed. So 90% or 90+% of the cost structure will remain. I would say rent and payroll are the two by far the biggest cost for a school. और आप कोई भी बिजली का बिल देखें कितने यूनिट्स लगते हैं और उससे कितनी सेविंग्स होगी. जो भी सेविंग्स होगी, I agree the school should not pocket it. It should be passed on to the parent.
Achha, two more comments. One comment is from Mr. Adeem Mushtaq. As you mentioned that testing methods will change, adapt to the situation as it unfolds. How do you see the evaluation criteria changing for kids, especially in the primary and secondary schools?
देखिए, primary, secondary testing, I feel ना पहले इतनी important थी, ना ही future में इतनी important होगी. I think that testing should be done at the primary level or the lower secondary level, only to see if the school is on track, right? I feel that the assessment should be on the student and the family's commitment to their academic priorities. And it's much better to assess that through attendance, through participation, through attempting homework, the quality of the work that's done, and not so much on the marks, right? So assessment, अगर आप कुछ पढ़ा रहे हैं, उसकी assessment जरूर कर लें, just to see अगर सही deliver किया है हमने ये content. मगर फर्ज की अगर बच्चे ने सही नहीं किया, मगर बहुत मेहनत की है, I think to me that is all that is required from the kid's perspective. If the assessment is weak, then the school should be doing something better, right? So the assessment criteria, let's say if a kid doesn't do well in the similar kind of assessment, पहले हम multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks, short answers वो पहले कर रहे थे, अब भी फर्ज कीजिए अगर यही करें और बच्चा अगर सही नहीं कर रहा, मगर homework हो रहा है, attendance सही है, then the school should think about making the online delivery of content better. Slow it down, give the student one-on-one help, use online breakout groups to facilitate that. So I think if assessments are used only for promotion of the kid, तो वो वैसे ही system में मसला है. And if the assessment is designed to make the school be better and do a self-evaluation more than evaluating the student, तो उसमें जैसे भी assessment हम online पे करेंगे, उसमें हमें ज़्यादा feedback in fact मिलेगा. In the past, assessment में बहुत मुश्किल था to figure out कि भाई इस topic में कौन सा concept बच्चे को समझ नहीं आया. But now with online testing, all of this is tabulated, recorded. There are Excel documents and reports so that you can drill down into the details of क्या concept में gap रहा है. क्या ये सिर्फ बच्चे का gap है या class का gap है? And is it solved by more practice? Is it solved by more interaction? Is it solved by more, instruction time? So I feel in the future, it will only get better from an assessment standpoint.
Let me take one last comment from Mr. Salman Ghaffar. Teachers' cost may go up when sessions will have fewer students per set class.
What will go up?
Teachers' cost.
The teachers' cost goes up in what case?
Goes up when sessions will have very few students in per class, because the restriction is going to.
Look, I think that's something for the school to figure out, right? If the teacher cost per student goes up, then the school needs to do what it needs to do to get teachers to attract students to their class. There's an element of sort of commercial competitiveness that exists in any industry and for any job. So this is sort of one of the natural Darwinian elements of any society. of any industry, of any job. So cost fluctuations and a redefining of what it takes to be a fantastic teacher will change, will evolve. And this is perhaps, I would say, in fact, मैंने एक ये यहाँ पे लगाई थी कि for teachers, it is very, very important that this learning curve changes. Okay, that even if we were doing something well at one point, the requirements from a teacher are very, very different. And if you look at what it takes to engage a student in person, is very different from what it would take to engage that student online. So the teacher skills will have to evolve. And to me, of all of the stakeholders, admin काम कर लेगी. It's just the tools are there. They just have to be committed. Student काम कर लेगा. To me, the two primary stakeholders that are extremely strained in this environment, one is the teacher that has to reinvent themselves. And two, it is a primary caregiver at home. The pressure on that individual is intense right now, right? And especially in a very role-defined environments in Pakistani society, the role of the primary caregiver at home will be stretched to a breaking point. So there, I feel we should have discussions in our homes to see how are we going to handle as a family, not just as the one parent, how will that parent handle the kid or the kids, but as a family, how will we support each other to manage the homeschooling part of it?
Let's conclude the session.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Good luck, and I look forward to other topics on the Memon corporate group. Mr. Mitani, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So much for that.